Welcome to Season 5 of Stan's Revenge. My name is Noah Almond. I've uncovered the true fundamentals of the electrical polarization process. This is unlike traditional DC electrolysis, as the dissociation of the water molecule is performed by opposing voltage potential instead of amperage. This allows for the generation of HHO gas from natural water without any electrolyte or chemical additives. In this chapter, I experiment with new cell designs, VIC transformers, and the electron extraction circuit. I'll be improving water fuel cell efficiency and increasing gas production to even greater levels. Join me as I uncover the secrets of Stanley A. Meyer. This is Stan's Revenge. Alright, this is my balanced inductor. I've got 22 gauge, I believe, wire wrapped all the way around this thing in a fashion to where it equals approximately 160, my final reading there, millihenries, as one of these secondary coils here are. From the bifilar center tap, we'll have about 100 and, well, it's growing for some reason. I don't know why these values keep changing, but here's 166 millihenries, whereas my new windings in combination account for about 164, let's say. So we're just maybe 3 millihenries off. That's acceptable. This will be part of the new Secrets of the Universe Part 2, the electrical polarization process, where I actually show circuit layout, and we're going to have this nice balanced coil in action so you can see the equal opposite polarity pulses and know exactly how this circuit is connected so you can replicate my results. You can replicate my entire apparatus here. Still trying to get my life together though. No, not the box. No, not the box. Oh my god. Not the box. Oh my god. Just going to do some preliminary measurements. We're going to look at waveform of just, the secondary by itself versus bifilar versus, connecting the inductor, which terminal it's connected up to, the polarity of it. We're going to be, if we can get to it, all kinds of things today. And for reference, I have this coil here, which is basically my mount is all as one continuous coil. The same inductance as one of the secondaries coils on this. Alright, secondary only in true Stan Meyer's fashion with the diode on the positive rail going to the cell. No inductors, both are bridged. Bifilar primary. And the other two secondaries are open. So we have just one coil of the secondary hooked up. No inductors. You see them bridged right there. Diode in the standard Stan Meyer's configuration. We get this waveform, which just does have some polarity difference to it. Extremely low amperage. Is that right? 40 volts across the cell. Reach a maximum of 50 volts there, but is that right? We're only consuming 100 milliamps. No production at the cell. We might have something here. Hang on. At lower frequency, that peaks. So it's 700 hertz. If we take it back up, we can chop it to the maximum, about right there. 946 hertz. But again, span across all four of those cells, we should have a much higher voltage. Do love the amperage though. But again, no production. A in-phase waveform at the cells does not allow for production because there's not enough equal opposite polarity pulses. From our, quote, reference ground here of floating zero, you can see both these waveforms travel the same thing. That will not work for the electrical polarization process. You need opposite polarity pulses, preferably not dipping above or beyond this arbitrary open ground. Changing the input polarity gets us a little different waveform here. Now we are more or less staying at about that arbitrary ground level right there. We do have just a little bit higher voltage, but still not enough to produce anything on the cells. Alright, reverse the polarity on the diode, as you can barely see there. We got it flipped upside down there. Going this way. Still just one single coil here. So waveform we get actually opposite polarity at the cell, as you can see, indicated by the green going positive. Similar results. Reversing the primary, we originally had it default. That's what we get. Similar voltage, similar everything. Moving the inductor to the other terminal of that secondary, the blue connection, essentially, with current respective to what it should be. Let's see. Cool, look at this. Get some equal opposite polarity kind of building there. You see that green? See that green kind of do that a little bit, but maybe just a couple volts more. Reversing the diode on that negative terminal, let's say, with current now opposite to what it should be producing. Still get some polarity difference there, but you see the waveforms are in phase. Oh, this is with the primary reversed, by the way. So let's switch that and see what it is in normal mode. Oh, weird. We get some, that's definitely a lot different. Look at this. We have no dipping across that 0 volt mark. And we do have, with the blue and green, polarity difference, kind of building equal opposite during that off time. Pretty interesting. We're getting about the same voltage, about the same everything. No production. Alright, so now we got the secondary in a bifilar mode. Diode in the standard position. Standard position. This is our waveform, very much in phase with each other. We do get a much higher potential difference, and the cells reflect that by showing production. Nothing spectacular though. It's still very much like the amperage for the voltage level in the gas production, but this is not an ideal waveform. Reversing the primary does this. Production is not as good, and that's not an ideal waveform whatsoever. Reversing the polarity, we get this here. Similar voltage, similar everything. Reversing primary polarity, we get this. Interesting waveform. Very little production. Similar to our previous results. Still under 1 amp, which is awesome, but diode is now in the secondary position. Second, you know what I mean. And with current respective to how the circuit should flow. And this is the waveform. Okay. Still similar voltage. Cells produce a little bit. Still at 1 amp, cool. Still not an ideal waveform. Reversing primary polarity, we get that. But hey, wait a second. Do you see this kind of equal opposite discharge here during that off cycle? We've got kind of opposite polarity, kind of there. It wants to collapses, but obviously this is not balanced at all. And just to be thorough, the polarity on this diode has been reversed at the secondary location, the negative terminal rather, and it's now essentially opposite the current flow. And we get this. Opposite polarity at the cell, but still pretty much similar everything. That was the polarity on the primary reversed. Let's see what it looks like without it, so we can call it quits here. Okay, cool. Whoa, what is this? Interesting. Other than I need to maybe bug this level out right there. Let me pause that. During that pulse off time, look at that kind of equal opposite spike here, where actually you can see it kind of expand as a spike and then taper off. But all that voltage potential is still left in the cell there during that pulse off time. Now for the big cheese here. We're going to put this diode back in the primary position per Stan Meyer patent and connect this inductor and see what it does. There we are. Womp womp. In phase. Low voltage. Reversing. A little better polarity difference. No production at the cell. 56 volts. Extremely low amperage consumption. And I'm pretty sure this is where everybody's at. If they would just look at their waveforms directly at their cells, they would understand that they are not getting the proper waveform. I harp and harp and harp about this. It's about the waveform. Believe me or not, dude, it doesn't matter. This is my findings of it. Reversing the inductor polarity. Okay, higher voltage. We got 99 volts.
Got 99 volts, but an amp ain't one.
400 milliamps at the cells. This waveform right here. Again, strange, not optimal. Reversing the polarity on the primary. Ooh, what is this? Wow, what is this? Look at that beautiful equal opposite on the collapse. And 93 volts at the cell. But it looks like I'm sticking more voltage in there than normal. 400 milliamps. This is really nice. I will take this all day. Let's take a little snappy here. Turn that off. One moment. And that's actually, look at that, ideal for the pulse off time flyback mode. That equal opposite spike of energy is beautiful and sustains through that pulse. That is optimal waveform. And to my point here, now just previously I was getting about 99 volts, and I think this peaked at 93, and I believe it has better gas production. Uh, 93 volts, which points to the fact that you can have a lower voltage, equal opposite polarity pulse, like this one right here, and have it perform better than a higher voltage, non-equal opposite polarity, unequal opposite polarity pulse. An in-phase wave signal, if you will. Further proving that it's voltage doing the work here, not amperage. My amperage at the cell right now is literally under 400 milliamps. But the waveform and the voltage both confirm the results that I'm getting by producing the gas at exponential rates based on the frequency I achieve, which determines the resonance and also the voltage level. But the more voltage I put into this thing, the more gas I get, period. As the more voltage going into my cells, the more production I get, while amperage stays minimum. You guys want calculations and all this mathematical gibberish. when literally I am producing what has said to have been done. I'm a man of real world action here. Okay, this is what I've done all my life. Real world shit. You know, if I'm reproducing this and making this happen per what he says, what happens? What is there not to understand about equal opposite polarity, about an LC circuit, about balancing the inductance, about the waveform? But I could scream until I'm blue in the face, and some of y'all just won't get it, and that's fine. I encourage you to remake this product here, this apparatus, and see for yourself. Maybe you have the testing equipment to determine if it's voltage or amperage doing it. Maybe you have some means of some idea to verify this, or some way to improve efficiency further by reducing amp consumption and jacking up voltage with the waveform that you already know what it is. I mean, that's pretty nice. 1 amp getting 82 volts. And this kind of waveform here, maintaining. Alright, let's do some more experimentation. I'm changing the inductor location. It's now essentially inductor B. Taking it back down to near our original frequency. In phase polarity, minuscule voltage, minuscule amperage, but yeah, nothing. Swap primary polarity. Okay, cool. Still weak sauce everywhere. Yep, not ideal. I do wonder though that, you know, if I'm only pumping 30 volts in this thing at 0.6 amp, like, could I dump 100 volts into the primary? I mean, like, what would that look like? Makes me want to get a 60 volt power supply. Changed polarity on the inductor. We get an in-phase signal. Polarity reaching difference, you know, 90 volts to generate some production. Nothing really special crazy. Reversing primary polarity. Yeah, crazy transformation of waveform there. Yeah, 82 volts at the cell. 1 amp consumed, but we're also at a lower duty pulse. Let's bring that back close to 50. Oh wow, look at that whole waveform change. This was closer to 30 right here. Bringing it to 50. See how it lifts that floor? Look at that. That sine wave it makes. Or kind of links up right there in the middle. That's pretty cool. We've achieved 93 volts, and cells are producing nicely. Let me pause this. Zooming in here, we kind of have this, I guess, pulse right here. But on that field collapse, we get that second pulse. So I guess pulse doubling, I guess, because we do have a pulse here. Even though, let's see if we can zoom in that just a little further. So yeah, we have a pulse generated there, but yeah, field collapse, we have kind of a... Moving on, let's invert the polarity of this diode. Hmm, 96 volts. Interesting, obviously have a polarity reversed at the cell, as you can see, but Interesting how that works there. Reversing the primary. Kind of got some EOP happening right there during the pulse. All over the place here. It's not ideal. Reversing inductor polarity just for fun. Interesting. I don't know what you would call that waveform, really. Kind of trying EOP. Maybe frequency to adjust that a little bit better. Reversing primary. We now have an in-phase signal, 48 volts, got nothing. Got a crazy frequency here, 69 volts at the cell. Not enough to produce anything. Really low amp consumption though. Going down. That's reasonable. Moving the diode to the second position. And moving the inductor back to the inductor A position. Nice polarity. We got 96 volts across that cell. Well, consuming 3 amps. I think it's about where we were. I do have opposite polarity, but not exactly what we want. Reversing primary. Back to that waveform. We do have 94 volts. Opposite polarity kind of builds, but we're still not very balanced. Reversing inductor polarity there. In phase. Barely any voltage. Reversing primary. Weird oblong waveform. Yeah, not ideal. Yeah, I love only consuming 15 or 150 milliamps, but we just don't get nothing at the cell because we just don't got no voltage. Reversing polarity, so it is effective opposite of what the circuit should be. Kind of interesting. Not really much of nothing though. I reversed the polarity. $97 volts. Some gas production. Less than 3 amps consumed. It's kind of that similar waveform we were seeing before, just an opposite. Reversing polarity. We get in phase waveforms. 96 volts to cell. I mean, it's reasonable. But there's polarity difference of 96 volts between that blue line and green line. Moving the inductor to the opposite location, inductor B. And this is what we get. Blah, 57 volts. Reversing primary polarity. We have in phase, no voltage. Reversing inductor polarity. Look at that. 96 volts. Cells appropriately producing. I mean, 2.8 amps. Only 400 milliamps at the cell. Reasonable, but opposite, obviously. The cell operates pretty much the same way if it's wired reversed one way or another. Moving diode back to original position. Interesting. That was reversed polarity. This is standard polarity. In phase, you know, we got voltage on there. We have potential difference and appropriate production, but not ideal waveform. But it's not until we flip the polarity on the primary do we get this wonderful equal opposite polarity during that off time, that secondary pulse. Look at that. Let's zoom in. And my probe starts going crazy. Let me see if I can adjust that. There we go. Hopefully it'll stay steady here. We'll do that again. Watch this here. Kind of have, you know, almost in phase on this pulse off time you see right there. But as that potential grows, come on, stay put. You get that equal opposite polarity charge. I turned up the sensitivity here so you can really see that equal opposite polarity building during that off time if my probe would stop going crazy here. You see that from about right there? From right there. So I would assume the higher we go up from there, we get even more equal opposite polarity because we reached this threshold. Bam. That is ideal waveform right there. Because of the fact that it is equal opposite polarity. As you can see, the cells respond to that. Got 93, almost 94 volts at the cell. Only 400 milliamps. Consuming 90 watts of power. Let's go this way and see. I'm going to turn these back down to where they were. Hold up. Okay, back to where we were. Creating enough hydrogen around. I need to move my bubbler outside. I don't know what I did or did not get, but with this waveform right here, boom, 98 volts at the cell. We are consuming 6 amps now, but we still only have 500 milliamps at the cell. And these cells reflect that. Look at that equal opposite polarity. Essentially discharged. At the off time. Basically in equal fashion, you can see it peaks. All that energy is released, and then the capacitor keeps that energy in there. There we go. It's a nice way of looking at it. And then during that pulse on time, look at that kind of blue and green kind of collapse during that on time. And then squiggles. But we keep that charge within capacitor, and that, I'm assuming the inductor's collapsing there, provides that boost back of power. Equal opposite polarity. This is Stan's Revenge.